Welcome to the Record Celtic podcast. My name is Daniel Coe. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sport's very own Ryan McDonald. Ryan, it's another downbeat Celtic podcast today after we're recording this on Wednesday after last night Celtic crashed out of the Champions League against Kairat Almaty.
Yeah, a humiliating result. Dreadful night at the office. Dreadful. I mean, in terms of football, across 210 minutes more, if you include stoppage time and penalties, it's up there with the worst two games of football I think I've ever watched as well.
My God, it was eye-bleedingly bad. And
Yeah,
by the end, you were just like, if Celtic can just squeeze through here. But I said last night as a joke. I've had problems with my knees. I've had 5 knee operations. Every single one of them was more enjoyable than that 90 minutes last night. Or that 120 minutes last night. It was absolutely brutal to watch.
yeah, it wasn't enjoyable.
Well, I mean, we'll come to the consequences and the fallout from Celtic's exit. Before we do that, let's actually talk about the game itself in isolation. I mean, first of all, the starting lineup. I think a lot of people thought that maybe Negren would go further forward and Engels would come back in. Obviously, it was Forrest and Yang on the wings. And look, I love James Forrest. I think he's an absolutely brilliant player. He's a Celtic legend. Let's get it right. But he's an impact player now. The two of them stood out to me for two players that shouldn't have been starting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's hard to have a go at James Forrest. The guy is 34 years old. He's dedicated his entire career to Celtic. He shouldn't be in this position heading into, I mean, what was it, 10, was it almost 10 years ago? Longer even. The James Forrest scored the goal against Shakhtar Karagandhi that took Celtic through.
2013, 12 years ago, eh?
So even longer, mate, and he's still in the team just now. He's still starting a Champions League qualifier in 2025. With no disrespect, but you've got Anthony Ralston at right back as well, and it's incredible to think that Celtic have found themselves in this mess. To be honest, you look at the teams that they've crashed out to over the last 11 years. I think it's 7 defeats in the last 11 years. Liga Warsaw, Maribor, Malmo, AEK Athens, Cluj, Ferencváros, Midtjylland, and now Kairat Almaty. Kairat Almaty, by the way, are 315th in the European UEFA coefficient rankings, which is lower than St Johnstone Football Club, who play in Scotland's second tier.
I didn't realise that. That's
utterly abysmal. So I know I'm getting off track here. Back to the game. For that reason, I think it's James Forrest. I'm not going to. He's not the guy to kind of blame for this. I think the blame is, maybe we'll talk about later, lies at boardroom level. But in terms of team selection, I think Arne Engels was the only player that I would have probably played in front of either Yang or James Forrest. And like you said, Dan, pushing Negren out to the right-hand side like he played against Livingston. I don't think Negren's quite as effective out there, but with the resources that Celtic had available, I thought maybe that would have been the smartest move. You've got Arne Engels' set-piece deliveries, although last night they weren't
great last night.
They weren't on point, shall we say. But I just think in general, Arne Engels has actually made a decent start to the season whenever he's played.
I agree.
But yeah, to be honest, that lineup, we're picking at it, but that lineup should have been good enough to get through and to at least score against Kairat Almaty across two legs. But they didn't, and they're out, and it's what they deserve.
The one guy that I wanted to get your take on, that again, I'm not singling out for criticism by any means, because he's been a fantastic, a wonderful Celtic player. Mm-hmm. But Daizen Maeda, to me, Ryan, looks like a shell of the former player, or the player we even had a few months ago last season. Not just the miss last night, which the miss in isolation I thought was pretty extraordinary, the way he missed that. But he just doesn't look right to me. He doesn't look like the same player. People saying, oh, his head's been turned. I don't know if it's that, but there's something different about him. He just does not give off the same vibe that, I mean, for instance, last season I would always think he's going to hurt a team any minute. He's going to get away. Now it's not the same. I can't put my finger on it.
I can't remember, Dan, whether it was this podcast or it might have been Hotline Live that I made this point, but we were talking about the Celtic striker situation, and I said that for me, Daizen Maeda shouldn't be considered as Celtic's first choice striker. Mm-hmm. And I made the point that he simply just can't be relied upon when it comes to one-on-ones. I just think he's got no composure in front of goal. I know he scored 33 goals last season, and that was a phenomenal return. And a lot of that came from the left-hand side, which I think is his best position. But when it comes to one-on-ones, I just feel as if he lacks composure. And you saw that last night when he blazed it off over the bar. I think since almost April onwards, he's not looked like himself. Obviously, he missed that chance at Ibrox. He missed the chance in the Scottish Cup final at Hampden. And then he missed the chance last week against Kairat Almaty in the dying minutes when he went through 1-1 again. And then last night, he obviously missed another sitter. It's just, for me, he's been off the boil since the start of the season. I don't know what's going on. Brendan Rodgers kind of hinted a couple of weeks ago that maybe one or two players are wanting out the door. Maybe unfair to say that to name names here, but if you're going on form and you're going on his contract situation, Daizen Maeda is an obvious candidate there. He's not signed a new deal yet. He's 27. He's been linked, obviously, with big money moves down south to England, and Brentford are sniffing as well. His next contract, probably the biggest of his life. He's served, 3.5 years in Scotland, maybe longer. He's achieved everything he really can at Celtic. I think most people would agree, based on last season's form anyway, that he's probably an untouchable. I don't think Celtic could even consider selling him even now. But at the same time, if a player's unhappy and you saw it last year with Kyogo, he said I think he informed the club privately last summer that he wanted to leave. And then for me, between last summer and January, Kyogo kind of looked like a shell of his usual self. He didn't look happy.
Yeah.
That kind of trademark smirk that Celtic fans loved. It just it seemed as if he lost it. And I think he lost a killer touch in front of goal as well. And if that's the case with Daizen Maeda and other players, then it's easy for us saying that he's untouchable. But if the player doesn't want to be there, Celtic they just need to let him go. The problem is, where is the succession plan? As we've seen over the last year, Kyogo, there's still not a striker in the door that's replaced him. Nicholas Kuhn, still not a replacement. Jota, who's been injured, still not a replacement. You could even argue to a certain degree that Greg Taylor, I know Kieran Tierney's come in, but you're still down a left back, and it's taken until Wednesday, the 27th of August, to find a deputy when Kieran Tierney can't last longer than 65, 70 minutes. So at the end of the day, it comes down to recruitment as well. You need to have a succession plan. And I don't know I don't think the Celtic are going to have any sort of replacement for Daizen Maeda lined up. I think he's one of the most unique players in world football, which is why I'd class him in that kind of unsellable category. But he doesn't look he doesn't look himself, and whether that's down to speculation, I don't know. We'll find out over the next week.
There's a couple of other players that I kind of thought maybe we could talk about, but to be honest, they were all in a similar boat. I mean, Idah looks absolutely destroyed. I mean, when he took that penalty, and I don't know what you think. I have no idea why he went first. That seems really strange to me in the shootout. But he looks destroyed, and a lot of people, getting on his back now. I know, and saying he's not worth the fee and whatever. I think it's quick to forget that Idah, when he first came in, was brilliant in that loan spell. He scored twice at Ibrox. He scored the win in a Scottish Cup final. He scored at Villa Park. This is a guy that is very capable. You're not talking about some dud here who's, Celtic have just had their pants pulled down. But his confidence just looks at rock bottom. I don't know what you do. I don't know if you play him through it. I don't know if you take him out. I mean, I've no idea what you do with Idah, but he just looks a million miles to the player that came in loan 18 months ago or whatever.
Yeah, he looks like you say, mate, I think his confidence is on the floor. He looks like a player that just really needs a goal to get his campaign up and running. But I'm looking for £9 million. You need that. You need to be expecting a lot more. I think you're right to point out that when he first came in on loan, and people, like you say, can quite easily forget this, but if it wasn't for Idah Maeda and Brendan Rodgers' first season back, Celtic probably wouldn't have won the league.
You're right.
Many crucial goals. They wouldn't have won a double because they wouldn't have scored in the Scottish Cup final last minute either. So, and fans were crying out for Celtic to sign him. If they hadn't, they would have been uproar.
This time last year,
Yeah, you can argue about how long it took, and maybe that led to an inflated fee because Kyogo got injured and Celtic basically had to go and get the deal done with Norwich that week and shake hands. But yeah, he looks like a player just struggling so badly. And it's a shame he's carrying this £9 million price tag as well, because I don't think that he's ever going to be I don't know if he was ever viewed as a regular Celtic number 9. I think his best performances have probably come off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at the goals he scored in his loan stint. You look at some of the goals he scored last season. Most of them are from the bench. So he is a good impact player. But obviously he didn't make that impact last night. But this season, it's hard to not feel sorry for him, to be honest, because he's struggling really badly, and just nothing is falling from him whatsoever. I actually did think he made a bit of an impact coming off the bench last night, just in terms of his general play and offering something kind of different up front. But yeah, it's another another forgettable night. And do you know what? Fair play to him as well. At least he stood up and took responsibility by grabbing the ball and going first.
That's true.
You look across the city. I think the Cyril Dessers last season took a lot of flack for Rangers fans by not taking the penalty in the League Cup final, which Celtic had won. So at least Daizen Maeda, with all his kind of faults at the minute, at least he is still taking the responsibility, and he's at least trying to do his bit. But yeah, that penalty miss kind of last night just really kind of summed up how his season started so far.
We'll talk before we finish, Ryan, about the board, but I wanted to get your take specifically on Brendan Rodgers and his kind of level of complicity in this debacle that Celtic have went through. Because I mean, look, I was thinking about it last night. When's the last time Celtic won a big game? I mean, you go back to January against Bayern Munich. Celtic, brilliant. A kick of the ball away from taking Bayern into extra time. Fantastic. Since then, lost twice to Rangers, lost the Scottish Cup final, lost this game. If you even take into account that League Cup final you mentioned, I know Celtic won it in penalties, but they drew 3 each, and it wasn't the greatest performance. It's been so long since Celtic on the pitch went out in a big game and won it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, losing to Barry Ferguson's Rangers at home, getting thumped by Philip Clement's Rangers at Ibrox, was it 3-0 after the turn of the year? I think probably the best performance was when they went toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich in the Allianz Arena and came within a second of winning it and taking it into extra time, obviously before Alphonso Davies scored that goal. But yeah, obviously the Scottish Cup final, losing the treble, and then the first big game of the season, of games rather, over 2 legs, they couldn't even score. So yeah, I think it's right. Questions have got to be asked of why this Celtic team have underperformed and are underperforming. And it's been a theme. It's been over the course of 2025 that they've simply not reached the levels that they did during the first half of last season. They were scoring goals for fun. They were almost, just as entertaining as Ange Postecoglou's Celtic. Fans were turning up and to games, excited to see, what the scoreline was going to be. It was a case of it was going to be 3, 4, or 5. Celtic are blowing away teams for fun, but since January, it has been a hard watch. I know Celtic have obviously they won the double last season. They went far in the Champions League, but it's now August, and over the last 8 months, it's not been the Celtic that fans have been used to watching over the last few years, and ultimately, Brendan Rodgers has got to shoulder some of the blame for that. But at the same time, I think it's down. A major reason for that is down to the fact that he's lost his best players and they've not been replaced. And again, I think that comes down to the board.
Well, on the board then, let's get to the board. Look, I said this, I think it was to yourself on here or on Hotline Live before. I think the thing with me with the Celtic board that just, more than anger or frustration, it's just complete bewilderment. Why is this happening? The money is there. It's not like it's Michael Nicholson's money or Peter Lawwell's money or anyone's money. The money is there. There's players out there that we're sure have been identified that Celtic can afford. Why is this not happening? I mean, what did the board gain by hoarding money? I mean, they get nothing but mountains of stick for the team underperforming. I mean, can you imagine today being Michael Nicholson or Peter Lawwell or whoever? I mean, can't be going to Tesco for your messages, can you? You'll be getting absolutely slaughtered. So what did they get from this? Like, what is the game plan? I really do not understand it at all. It just, as I say, I'm bewildered by it.
I mean, I think it's just a long-term strategy of the club that they're just risk-averse. And I've made this point as well before, that the irony of being risk-averse is the fact that they've gambled £40 million by not signing a striker, by not signing a winger, even on loan, to give Celtic a chance of, adding more, or at least add more firepower to a team that is struggling to score at the minute.
That's the irony. The irony that is the biggest risk by not doing that. They're taking a risk.
You're not asking for mountains of cash to be spent. I mean, you're looking at the ballpark of players that they're bringing in the wake of losing the Champions League playoff. You're still spending £5 million on Michel Ange Balakwisha. You're still bringing in Srirachi on loan from Boca Juniors. But these guys are coming in 2 weeks too late.
I know. And Balakwisha's a guy that's been on the radar. I mean, I'm sure I can remember this time last year.
This has been going on for 12 months, right? And why was there not an urgency to get this deal done before the Champions League deadline? And I kept making this point as well. I think I even raised it in a press conference. They talk about the transfer deadline coming up and Celtic have to be stronger coming out of it in September the 1st. The deadline was mid-August when Celtic had to register their squad for this Champions League playoff. And the fact that they never managed to bring in another winger or striker, for me, it's gross negligence at the top level.
Completely.
It's mismanagement. And I feel as if Celtic, when they got the draw, almost took it for granted that, we'll get through, we'll get past. It's a Kazakhstan team, we'll limp through, get the money, and then they'll spend it in the final days of the window. That's just a gamble that is not paid off for the last 5 attempts that the last 5 qualifiers that they've had in the Champions League. They've been dining out of Rangers, boosting the coefficient in Europe over recent years, because as a result of that, Celtic have had, as the Premiership winners, have walked into the Champions League or parachuted into the Champions League group stages or league phase or whatever you want to call it, because of Scotland's coefficient. But now I think we're 17th in the coefficients now as well. So it's going to be, in the next 2 years, I think it is, there's going to be 2 or 3 qualifying hurdles now for the champions of Scotland to get through to reach the league phase. I think there's also going to be a play at the second place team in Scotland will now compete in the Europa Conference League.
Yeah, that's what you say.
So this was an open goal for Celtic to go in and bank that £40 million and again use it to take the club forward. But there just seems to be a ceiling with this board that they're not willing to go that extra mile, or to even just plan ahead. The most baffling thing for me, Dan, is the fact that the league last season was almost wrapped up in October. I think it was effectively done in October. Rangers fans were in Philip Clement's back. They wanted him out. It was a kind of toxic atmosphere over at Ibrox. The league was done, let's be honest.
I agree.
Celtic have known that this playoff was coming up since then. They knew knew that was barring a catastrophe. This was coming up. But they failed to plan for it. They failed to plan for, I keep going over it, but those 3, for Kyogo and Nicholas Kuhn leaving, there was no succession plan there. And this is where they find themselves.
See, this is the thing. Brendan Rodgers and Celtic fans, they aren't being unreasonable and saying, look, we want you to spend big, we want X, Y, Z, we want you to really push. They're just looking for the players that have gone to be replaced.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Celtic fans weren't asking for an amount of cash to be spent, but just go out.
See for the guy you've just sold 20 million, going to give us a £4 or £5 million replacement. That's more than reasonable. And look, this is why I'm so bewildered. You cannot tell me these guys in charge of Celtic earning £1 million a year or whatever they earn. They must be clever enough to know that that's reasonable and to know that someone might say, okay, what difference would a player like Balakwisha make in Celtic's Champions League champion or whatever? Well, do you know what? Kairat Almaty were so poor that, I'll go on record, I don't think they'll score a goal in the Champions League. I think they'll lose every game in the league stage. And honestly, if they get a bad draw, I can't see them scoring a goal. So a player of decent quality at Balikwisha could have made the difference. Easily could have made the difference.
And the thing as well, Daniel, that I think is what is infuriating supporters the most is the complete and utter radio silence coming from the Celtic boardroom as well.
You're spot on
There's
now.
no accountability, there's no transparency, there's more questions than answers about what is actually going on at the football club. What is the level of ambition? I mean, I made this point in a column the other day, but I'm not being funny. Do Celtic fans even remember what Michael Nicholson's voice even sounds like?
That's a great point now. That's a great point.
When was the last time he came out and actually addressed the fans, shared his vision for the club? This is a chief executive of one of the biggest clubs in football. And I think the last time, apart from an AGM in front of the shareholders, maybe the last time he actually came out and had an interview was when Brendan Rodgers was unveiled as Celtic manager in 2023.
Can't remember.
And just on that, by the way, I've got a quote from Michael Nicholson that day. He said, "From our perspective, the strategy has always been clear, and that's to be a world-class football club in whatever we do." That's what he said the day Brendan Rodgers was unveiled for the second time. And the words world-class, I think, obviously were picked up by the Green Brigade during a banner protest the other day and scribbled out and replaced by basic. Because, you can't help but laugh. World class. I mean, this is a Celtic team that can't get past clubs ranked lower than St Johnstone in the Champions League. That there's nothing world class about that. They don't operate like a world class football club. They don't operate like a Champions League club. Another one as well from Dermot Desmond. This is 2020, so this is the time to be judged now. So Dermot Desmond said, "In 5 years' time, I'd like to say our team is better than any of Martin O'Neill's, Gordon Strachan's, Brendan Rodgers, or Neil Lennon's." So here we are in 2025, and this is probably the weakest squad of the lot. So it's just, I think at the minute there's a massive, massive disconnect between the board and the fans, and I feel as if it's just the board's own doing. They seem to be masters of their own kind of downfall. They seem to be masters of just creating a wedge between the fans, putting up unnecessary barriers and just causing unnecessary dramas when it shouldn't be like this. They're sitting on tens of millions of pounds, and £3 million of it has been invested in the playing squad this summer. It's just, that's not how a world class club operates. It's not. And Brendan Rodgers, I think, has been severely let down. He came back to the club and he immediately stated that the burning ambition of his was to make Celtic a force again in Europe. That's why he came back. Is Brendan Rodgers really going to be motivated by Europa League football? When he took Celtic within seconds of taking Bayern Munich to extra time for a place in the last 16 of the Champions League last season. Celtic actually made inroads. You could see it. There was something to be excited about when you watch Celtic for the first time in Europe for the first time in years. And all that's been completely undone. All of it's been completely undone. It was almost a waste of time, because now they're in the Europa League. There's no matter what you say, there's not the same. Fans won't have the same appetite. The players probably won't have the same appetite for Europa League. You're back to Thursday, Sunday football as well, which again that's not ideal for supporters who are travelling over from Ireland. I need to be back in the boat the same day for work on the Monday. So crowds are going to drop as well as a result of that. Matchday revenue will drop as a result of that. So there's a knock-on effect of failing to qualify for the Champions League. And again, all rests at the board's door. If they're using Rangers as a yardstick, by the way, this Rangers team are in it's one crisis to another. Rangers at the minute. If that is the yardstick, then I think that tells you all you really need to know. Celtic they'll never progress in Europe. They'll never achieve the potential that the club has if this is how the board wants to operate.
Two quick things then before we wrap up. You mentioned Brendan Rodgers there about his motivation to play in the Europa League and what have you. I think the chances of him extending his contract and staying beyond May are slim to none now after last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Gordon Strachan, I think he said that Celtic and Rangers managers have a shelf life of around 3 years. So if you look at over the last decade, Rodgers, when he finishes this contract, living at hell for around about 5.5 years over the last decade. I think he's done his bit. There's nothing left for Brendan Rodgers to achieve as Celtic manager. He's clearly, he said the other week that there's no conflict between him and the board, but privately he must be livid at how
he must be.
He actually said that he has to convince the board to make signings. I mean, why? How do you have to convince a board to make signings when it's clear in plain sight the gaping holes that have been left in the wake of them selling the best players?
Mm-hmm.
It's clear. So I don't think Rodgers needs this. He's done his bit at Celtic. He's been there for 2 years, for over across 2 spells. He can make a lot of money going elsewhere in Saudi Arabia, or for me, I've always felt he would be a good he'd be a good fit for a team in the La Liga as well.
La Liga or something.
So yeah, for me, there's no incentive for Rodgers to stay, and you can't really blame him for if he does go for leaving at the end of the season.
And what about the weekend now? I mean, we mentioned Rangers. I think in many ways Celtic are pretty lucky that Rangers, as you say, keep lurching from disaster to disaster, because if Rangers had a better start to the season, the narrative would be incredibly different. But having said that, look, Celtic now have played 6 games this season. They're yet to concede a goal. Conceded once against Falkirk. It's Kasper Schmeichel's yet to concede a goal. Going into this game at the weekend, look, this just pops into my head. I would start Colby Donovan and Dane Murray, because the thing about them last night was just that they looked like they were playing with a freedom that the rest of the squad don't have at the minute. You know what I mean? I'd throw them in. Beyond that, I don't know how Celtic are going to react. I don't know if they're going to be able to lift themselves for a clash at Ibrox. I really don't know what to expect on Sunday. I don't know how
the squad just arrived back this afternoon at Glasgow Airport. It was obviously a long journey home, and you just wonder what the physical state, what their mental state is like after a draining night in Kazakhstan. The thing is, if Celtic had qualified, the narrative, like you said, could have been so different. There would have been a positivity going into this game on Sunday. The fans would have been gloating at Ibrox, I'm sure, of reaching the Champions League, and it looks like Rangers, barring a miracle, on Wednesday in Belgium, are out. But yeah, this is the position that Celtic find themselves in. I think Anthony Ralston was actually taking painkillers during the game last night. So it looks like he could be a doubt for Ibrox on Sunday, which means Colby Donovan could step into his shoes. And I think you're quite right to highlight that, Dan. I thought Colby Donovan was excellent when he came on.
Yeah,
he's only 18, but he showed maturity beyond his years. He could very nearly get an assist as well. In the final, I think it was the final minutes of 90 normal time. So he was unlucky there. And Dane Murray, I've said it for years. And I'm sure some of my colleagues will be fed up hearing me say this, but I've always felt that Dane Murray's, I think he's destined to be a star for Celtic. He's got every attribute you need and you want from a defender.
I remember you saying this to me, and I hadn't watched much of him. I thought that's quite interesting. And then this summer when they come back, he's obviously bulked up, and the 2 or 3 times I've seen him, I'm starting to get really excited about him. I think he could be, as you say, a real star for Celtic.
Yeah, so if Celtic need to pitch them in, which I'm not sure they will need to pitch Dane Murray in, because I think Carter Vickers and Liam Skill will probably start. Although Carter Vickers, again, he looked a bit shaky last night uncharacteristically. But I think for me, the team you're looking at on Sunday, you'll be looking at Schmeichel in goals, either Ralston or Donovan at right back, Carter Vickers, Liam Scales, Kieran Tierney. The midfield is where it gets interesting, Dan. I think Luke McCowan deserves a shot. I don't know how much more, what else he can do to get a run of games. I think, again, he added a bit of energy when he came on last night. I felt sorry for him when he missed that penalty. Obviously, ended the night in tears, but that's just the luck of the shootout. So, as a wild card, would you throw? I'll throw this question to you. As a wild card, would you pitch Luke McCowan in, or what?
Listen. See, at this stage, nobody. I know that this sounds like something your manager at under 11 says to you, but Nobody in that team last night could have any qualms if they're dropped. Absolutely none. Like Rio Hatate, I think on his day is the best midfielder in Scotland, maybe even the best player in Scotland. But his days too far and few in between. I mean, last night, wouldn't have known he was on the pitch. Look, I love Cal McGregor as well. Fantastic player. But again, he gave the ball away a lot last night.
Yeah.
Look, if McCowan starts, or even, I mean, I know it's probably too late in the pod to get into this, but Paulo Bernardo as well. I think he's a really talented player, a really good player. I don't think anyone could have any complaints if either or both of them come into Ibrox at the weekend. I don't think that will happen. But no, I would have no one could have any complaints if Luke McCowan was thrown in at the weekend. No chance.
I'm going to throw him in. So I would. This isn't how Celtic are going to line up. I doubt he will be thrown in. But if I was the manager, I'd be putting Luke McCowan in midfield. I think he has that energy when Celtic could probably be lacking it after that journey home. I think Cal McGregor's obviously got to start. Then it's probably a flip of a coin between Rio Hatate and Arnie Engels. I'd probably go with Arnie Engels.
Between them, I would go Engels just now as well.
Yeah, I'd have Nigginen out in the right. Daizen Maeda, for all he's kind of been misfiring this season, I'd have him through the middle, and I would have Balakwisha if he's signed and sealed by then on the left hand side. And yeah, I think that would be the team that I would go for at Ibrox. I think again it's going to be a tough occasion for all. Rangers have been have drawn 3 successive games, 1-1 in the league this season. It wouldn't surprise me if they turn up on Sunday and put on a show. You know, that's just what happened in the derby just after New Year. So Celtic have a good record against Rangers in recent years, in recent times. So it's going to be another massive day. There's obviously going to be backed by a crowd of 2,500 Celtic fans as well. And they'll be expecting them the team to show up and put on a performance and win, and probably win comfortably. I'm not so sure. I think if you're asking for a score prediction, I think it could be a draw.
I completely agree with you. I was going to say I think it'll be 2-2. I just can't. I don't know. I'm at my wit's end with this Celtic team at the minute. Hope I'm wrong. I mean, hope Celtic go there, put in a great performance and bounce back, but I just can't see it at the minute. I think that brings us to the end of today's. I hope it's been cathartic for you, Ryan. I might be later on before I find out if this has cleansed my soul a bit, but we'll see. That brings us to the end of today's Record Celtic podcast. Thank you very much for everyone listening at home. You can get involved in the conversation, obviously in Record Sport Online, and we'll be back next week to pour over the result from Ibrox. Ryan, it's always a pleasure.
Pleasure done. Cheers.
And thank you very much for listening at home. Cheers.